right. Hello, everyone. You're listening to Castbitten, a Dungeon Synth podcast. And I'm the host, Trev, and I am just totally thrilled because today we have the Francis Roberts on the show. And I'm so excited. I don't even know where to start with the introduction. Francis is a composer, a songwriter, a producer, a dungeon synther. He's based in San Diego, along with releasing music under their own name. They're behind Old Man Wizard, King Gorm, and I'm psyched to talk about this one, the Dread Crew of Oddwood.
Oh, you found it.
We'll get more into that. Oh, I found it. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, a lot of people don't find
Outside
that
of
one
this,
because it's mostly a
oh
pseudonym
no,
for that
oh
one.
man.
That's funny.
Yeah, I kind of want to talk about the pseudonyms as well. But if you haven't heard any of these, a lot of listeners here may recognize Francis from their pretty popular YouTube channel. Francis is just one of the biggest resources out there for newer musicians, or even like other levels of musicians that are trying to make dungeon synth that are just looking to improve as artists. Yeah, the song that you heard at the top of the show, that's from some of the music that Francis releases under their own name. That song was called They Stirred, and it's from the album Limbs Like Lifeless Tools. And that's just a great one to start with. Francis recommended that one, but to me in particular, it highlights what experience and careful attention to detail can do to kind of add to a track and take it to the next level. But yeah, that's a lot of talking for an introduction. Thanks so much for coming on, buddy. I'm so happy to have you.
Yeah, thanks for the invite. Thanks for reaching out. I'm looking forward to this.
Yeah, for sure. So you do so many different things, and they're all very interesting. And I was really just uh, internally wrestling, trying to decide how to go about conducting this. Maybe it'd be nice to just start with like a general musical background, because your musical background, it seems really, really deep and really wide. You kind of do a lot of stuff. I think that if we can get some context with that, then listeners will kind of have something to reference for any other questions. So can you maybe,
Sure.
I don't know, talk
Yeah.
about where you first got started with music, what your first projects were, anything like that?
Yeah, sure. So I guess a good place to start is that a lot of people seem to think that I'm younger than I am. So that's maybe where some of the
Oh,
experience
really?
comes. I'm 34, and I think a lot of people
Okay.
think that I'm like quite a bit younger than that. So I've
Oh, that's
been
fun.
doing this for a while now. I think I started playing in bands when I was maybe 17 years old. Started
Okay.
playing, well, aside from, I'm not counting things like elementary school, like band class. But that is some
Right,
experience, and
choir.
it's like a foundation of some kind. Um,
Sure.
and then I got into caring about music, I think when I was maybe 15 or 16 years old, maybe a little bit before that.
Okay, that's a
I
good
didn't
way
really
to
care about it
say
before
that.
that. I liked things like model airplanes, and
Nice.
and video games and stuff. But I
Yeah.
had a friend show me how to read guitar tabs when I was in high school, probably age 16 or so, and started teaching myself
Okay.
guitar on ASCII guitar tabs on the old internet. and
Nice.
and I probably started with stuff like Metallica and Led Zeppelin, Nirvana, pretty usual suspect type songs for beginner guitar
Right.
players that liked rock music. And from there, some of my friends in school had a like rock band club. It was called Rock Syndicate, which I still think is very funny. We still joke about that sometimes. But I made friends with a couple more people in the school that were interested in playing in bands, and probably got started with a punk band or something. I think we had a band called, I think we were called Thresher Tuna, and that was like a
Fresh
punk band that
tuna.
didn't have any shows or do anything. And we made I remember we made band shirts before we had songs, and then the band broke up. And
Oh
so
my
like there is like
gosh.
this subculture of people at our high school that would wear our band shirts, even though we
For just
weren't
an
a band.
idea.
It was like
Just a loose concept.
yeah, like the like the LaCroix of bands. It's like a hint of an idea of a band without actually having the flavor
Yeah.
for the songs.
Oh.
So from there we started another band, a couple of friends of mine. And I think there were maybe like 2 or 3 like not non-bands, like things like let's cover some punk songs type thing. And the first
Yeah.
band that actually like played shows was called Hellhound, and that was
Okay.
like a rock
Hellhound.
heavy metal kind of grungy type of a band. Um, like we
Yeah.
would cover things like Alice in Chains and maybe Stone Temple Pilots. Some I think we learned some Metallica songs, things like that. And we wrote some original songs, and that was the first band I was in that had original songs.
Okay.
And that band was with 2 of my friends who were also the band. I think that band sort of became the Dread Crew of Oddwood, because you mentioned that one. And the
Oh,
3 of
really?
us, like
That's kind of nice.
one of our bandmates was in another band, and there was like Renaissance fairs involved, and people offering us money to play music if we wore costumes, and being offered money to play music seemed really cool, so we did it, and we
And it just
combined
kept
2
going.
bands. Yeah, sort of snowballed it into a 9-piece
Okay.
band that had
Okay.
one show,
Yeah.
and the idea was like get together for this one pirate
Wonderful.
event where we were offered money to play in costumes at a pirate festival in Ojai, California, which is near Ventura.
So
Uh, yeah, it's just ridiculous.
I
And
think at this point because we've hinted at it so much, we should just take a quick breath and for listeners who maybe somehow aren't aware of the Dread Crew of Oddwood, it is a pirate-themed acoustic folk metal band. Am I getting
yeah,
everything there? Am I missing anything?
at this point, I think that's how they're marketing it. I'm not in that band anymore and haven't been for a long time. But
Oh no.
they
Okay.
yeah they we started that band in probably 2008, I think. And
Okay.
I think I left the band something like 5 years ago. I'm not sure. I am still friends with all of them. There was no like bad blood or anything like that. I was just
Right.
kind of done with it. But that's like one of
I
the other
see.
reasons people
Yeah.
don't usually find that one, is because it's more and more becoming a thing in my past.
Right.
But we
And
started that band and
that
toured
answers
a
some
lot.
questions. Right, yeah. I saw on their website, I didn't recognize your name, but then the names were also just nonsense. Just,
Yeah,
just like you
absolutely
said, pseudonyms.
nonsense.
So I thought, maybe one of
Um,
them's you. But
I have,
okay,
yeah, I
okay,
have,
that adds up.
I think I have different, there, I might actually have a different name on each of the albums that I was on. So it's like complete
Oh,
nonsense. Yeah.
wonderful.
All the names. I would never name my own character. I don't really like doing that. So I, for things like my own songs, it's like if we're using pseudonyms, someone else has to pick it for me. Um, so
I see.
I know I was Ruba Juba at some point, and I
Oh,
don't
okay,
remember all the other ones.
Rubajuba. Oh my gosh,
And that was
that's
just a name
fun.
that
That's great.
one of
That's
the
a good.
bandmates called my dog that when he was drunk one time, and
Yeah. Oh my
we just went with it.
god. Yeah, that's a nice one to have on the resume, even if you don't still do it. That
Yeah.
you're part of the Dread Crew. It's so funny. So I
Yeah.
don't mean to derail though. So you're getting into what sounds like what would eventually become stuff like that. You're writing your own songs for the first time. This is still in high school.
Hmm. And then and
Then
then Dread
what
Crew
came
is
next?
publishing songs for the first time. So Dread Crew is
Oh,
when I first
okay.
started recording and releasing music, and then from there,
Oh,
I
it
think the
really
next
all
one is
started with that.
yeah, exactly. That's like a. I wasn't
Wow.
even 21 at the time. Our youngest band member when we started Dread
Oh
Crew
my
was 16.
gosh.
Um,
Oh
I
my
think age,
gosh.
yeah, ridiculous. um, and then from there, I think Old Man Wizard is the next band that has like published material. There were some other bands in between, like rock bands, heavy metal
Okay.
bands. I played in some cover
Yeah. Old
bands.
Man Wizard's like a
Um,
heavy rock, hard rock kind of band, right?
yeah, and that one's that's been around since for about 10 years now, and we're releasing a new album on
Okay.
Friday actually. So that's our new album is coming out this
Ooh.
week, which is cool. I'm excited about it. I just opened my email this morning to see that we had our first ever 10 out of 10 review from a reviewer. So that's super exciting.
What? Oh, that's
Yeah, so
awesome.
someone gave
That's
us a
so
10 out of
great.
10.
Congrats.
Yeah. So cool. And that's gonna be our. I'm done with albums for that band. We'll probably still do singles from time to time, but
Right.
I
I remember seeing
don't
on the
really.
Okay, okay. I remember
Yeah,
seeing on the Bandcamp that I think this was going to be your final album with it.
yeah, and that's being
Is I
conflated
don't
as
know.
like
That's
the
kind of
band's done.
interesting as it is. Is that like a career choice?
Sort
Oh,
of. It's
okay,
it's like
okay.
partially like a. I guess I would say that I think albums are kind of a punished format today, and I think they're really cool and I like
Ooh,
making them, but it's a ton of extra work and cost going into making one that I want to make, and it's not really rewarded unless you're already popular. So it's one of those things where I sort
wow,
of
that is really interesting.
yeah it, I like want to put my time into things that aren't like I there's all these steps to releasing an album that aren't fun.
Yeah.
Like making the album and making the music for it's really fun. Like picking out an artist and working with them to commission some artwork, getting the graphic design all right. Like
Yeah.
all this stuff's really fun, but it's like the marketing stuff that's just really soul crushing where once you put all this money
Mm,
into the album you're basically just spending thousands of dollars out of your pocket, unless you spend thousands more dollars
yeah.
advertising it and working with publicists and getting it out there and then you can finally break even
Yeah.
when it's all said and done, and it's like a ton of work that I don't really like doing. So I will
I
probably keep
see.
making albums and stuff like that, but I don't really want to self-produce more LPs. It's just so much
I see.
stuff that I don't like in order to like let people know that I did something that I do like. So I'll like sort of fold to the direction the industry is going and switch to singles and videos, stuff like that. I think I really like making music videos and
You
um, oh, you'll go ahead.
Yeah, sorry to interrupt there. The That's a really interesting perspective. Do you have like if you could modernize it and say this is what I think works better for making good art, how do you imagine I don't know, album 2.0? What's a better way to do that? Since I
Uh,
all of your points make a ton of sense. It is kind of it's tough to do it as the artist and you're doing things that aren't art and aren't fun a lot of the time.
Yeah, so I think albums are kind of a hobby thing. Like I enjoy them. They used to be like a prime form of entertainment. I mean, LPs came out before everyone had, people didn't all have TVs in their houses yet. And listening
Yeah,
to an album is really cool. And these days, people want to listen to their favorite song from an album, and often don't have the attention span to sit and listen to music without doing anything else for 40 minutes. And
right.
I do, and I really like listening to music that way. But I also don't want to force other people or expect other people to listen to music the way that I like listening to it. So I think shorter form content makes more sense to produce things like 4 or 5 minute music videos. But
Yeah.
as far as like album 2.0, if I'm going that far and saying like here's my suggestion or what I want to do instead of albums is interactive content. I think that the stuff that
Really?
got me into music wasn't bands, it was video games. It was like this level in Castlevania is so cool because of the way it sounds. Like I'm frustrated as hell playing it, but I'll leave it on in the background because I think it sounds great.
Absolutely. I know what you
And
mean.
yeah, so I've been like trying to get into that type of stuff more. Um and I would
That's
love to
so
do like with a
cool.
band an interactive album of some kind of nonlinear music where your actions or your choices dictate how the song's going to sound. Like maybe you click a button
Oh
on
my
your
gosh.
screen and decide that like you program a basic mixer or something like that and say I want the acoustic version of this song today because I'm in that kind of a mood, and you pull the drums out, um, and having that all pre-done the same way that it would be pre-done for like a software mixer in a video game or even in like a VR game, I think is really fun. And I have been putting in some of my time and resources into figuring that stuff out. I'm not saying that you're going to get that from me anytime soon, but I like it
Right.
more than albums,
I
and
mean,
I
just
don't
to
want
have
to.
that idea is insane.
Yeah, a lot of people are doing it. They're not doing it outside of video games very much, but and like
Yeah.
why bother doing it outside of video games? Because if you've got like a little avatar to go with it, how cool is that? Um, but just seeing people recognizing that type of content is, you know, part of the future and completely missing the mark. Like the new Facebook announcement, for example, that just completely, it's like tone deaf, completely tone deaf. And
uh,
I think that there's other ways to go into that sort of nonlinear, who knows what's going to happen, uh, multimedia content. And I want to make music that fits into that, because I like the idea of like a nice version of what Facebook's talking about. I don't really want Facebook's version of it.
okay, I see. I'm not familiar with the Facebook thing you're mentioning. They tried to do something like along those lines of like the
They
interactive music thing.
not necessarily music, but I think there's an implication that it's just multimedia, all kinds of media.
Ah.
They were talking about
Okay,
rebranding. Their
yeah.
new brand's called Meta. It's sounds like it's sort of a I mean, imagine Second Life with your with your um, annoying relatives on
Yeah.
there.
Yeah, that sounds
So
terrible. It's
yeah,
no good.
it doesn't sound very good, but like I mean, once you're in that, you know, virtual world, suddenly everyone's bothering you, so you need escapes within the virtual world. So I assume there would be games in it. There's probably music in it. There's videos or performances in it, the same way that we've seen that in
Yeah.
a lot of Epic Games' as content, like Fortnite and Rocket League and stuff like that. We'll do like events where, you know, you have like a live music act, like they did Marshmello in Fortnite, and I thought that was really cool. Um, and I
Yeah.
think we're going to be seeing more and more stuff like that. And
Yeah, I think that's a fair prediction.
I like it. I think that's really a cool idea, and I want to play with it. So I'm figuring out how to, like, what's the list of things that I have to learn how to do in order to play with it.
Yeah. That's inspiring that you see that and you identify that and then you want to apply it to art. And I think if I remember right, you used that program. Is it called GIMP to make visuals for something? I think I remember
Yeah,
reading that on your website. Maybe is
yeah.
that?
I
Can
don't
you
remember
see
where
that
I would
kind
have
of coming
listed
into
that,
this
but
like grand scheme?
yeah, and that's basically just like a open source Photoshop alternative. It's not like a great program or anything, but it's just a free thing to get my foot in the door of making visual components to things
Okay.
that otherwise wouldn't have them.
So
Um,
do you see that as like a step in that direction of combining media and I don't know, getting big new things to reevaluate how we listen?
yeah, somewhat. I mean, that would be just a piece to make things like that, or Photoshop or Blender, things like that would just be making visual assets to introduce in whatever other things. I've been messing around with stuff like Unreal Engine and Godot Engine, Unity Engine, trying to teach
Okay.
myself pieces of that stuff to um, get more of the integration stuff figured out. Also, I've been lazy about it, but stuff like what's it called? Wise is another one. It's sort of a nonlinear audio editor. Really cool stuff that's possible with
Okay.
that, where you know, user input affects what you hear. Um,
Yeah.
so, and then on top of that, using that stuff has made me go back and reevaluate my music production workflow, where I'm thinking like, what are the smallest chunks that you can use to create a song, and you know, record samples of each of your notes, and basically you start using your computer or programming mixers almost as a sampler, where you say like, here's like a little string cue that would go with anything here, and you say like any of these like 20 ideas could all be made more dramatic with this string cue, and you use your music composition background to identify what notes that string cue needs to be in order to sort of fit with these other things, and then tell the computer like um, when this thing happens, the string cue enters, and because it goes with any of these other parts, it can happen at any part of the song, and you end up with really interesting things that don't like songs that are different every time you hear them, which I think is super cool.
Yeah, that whole process is just nuts to hear and think about and to conceptualize that.
Yeah, I
It's
think
really crazy to no,
I
yeah,
would say,
just
yeah, I would say
to
I
hear it
liken
in
it.
the context of you yeah, sorry. To just you kind of mentioned like you're done with albums. Albums maybe aren't the best way to do it. And then to hear all this as an alternative, something that I hadn't considered like people trying to find alternatives for, I guess. It's just very interesting.
Yeah, I like I just like thinking about different ways of presenting stuff, because I mean, um
Yeah.
if I can make an album this week and I can put it on Spotify, and and either nobody or less than 20 people will listen to it. And that's the thing that I don't like about
It's
albums,
true.
is that I
Yeah.
like so much more of the time and effort goes into convincing people to listen to it than to actually making the work. And
Mm.
I really like the idea of working towards having some kind of a um a framework that I can promote over time, where it's always the same thing, where kind of like in the way modern video games have updates or events or seasons. um, you
Okay,
basically
yeah.
have the music exist there, and then if you don't get it, if you don't go in this month and hear it, it changes next month, and it changes based on what
Yeah.
you do, and maybe you can archive it somewhere, but having some type of incentive for coming back to see the same thing because it's different next time. I guess I liken it to improvisation. A lot of people think that improvisers in music are just sort of making stuff up on the spot, but they're usually pulling like longer form like licks and phrases out of a
Sure,
vocabulary they've
yeah. Like a
developed over the years.
catalog.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And you're basically in this type of environment that I'm describing, I'm imagining just basically teaching the computer how to improvise with your vocabulary. So you're feeding it like things that you've written, and you're telling it which things go together, and then you're letting users experience it however they experience it, and it sounds like your music because you wrote it, but you instead of presenting like the final like linear version, like the 5-minute song, you're presenting it with just like hundreds or even thousands of like 3-second phrases, and telling it like teaching it over time how to interact, how the phrases interact with each other, and then it becomes music that you wrote that's fun for you to come back and listen to. Because I mean, to be honest, most of the stuff I write, like by the time I
Yeah.
release it, I'm already sick of it because I've heard it so many times.
Sure, sure. And something a little more grounded that I'd be curious to hear how you think. A discussion that's had a lot is with music being like streamed and online so much. Artists can put something out and then change it and not intend that to be like the experience of something changing, but more like kind of like you said with modern video games, correcting something, and this is the new state, unless someone intentionally archived it. This is the new thing. How do you feel about that? About maybe like larger artists changing something that they put on streaming. Does that have the
I
same
so
excitement to you, or is that something that you reconsider?
I kind of like associate that specifically with Kanye West, because he was the first person that I remember doing that, where he like took down his album and
Right.
released an
I
update of
think
it.
maybe that as well. Yeah.
um, and
Yeah, and I know that's a discussion that's been had.
Yeah, I think it goes hand in hand with the discussion of like what is a streaming service. Like people, I mean,
Right.
people want, especially musicians, not just people. People like streaming services because it lets them listen to their favorite songs without bringing their collection of albums with them. I think that's pretty easy to understand and relate to. I do that with YouTube. Like I'll pull up like a music video that I like and watch it again, and it's cool to not have to wait for it to come on MTV. But I think artists hate that like it's not a thing that's being sold anymore, and because of the
Hmm.
way capitalism functions, if you can't sell it anymore, suddenly that's not your job anymore, and you have to go do something else. And that piece of it like on its surface totally sucks, but when you look at the reason for it, the reason for it is because we have a better way of consuming music now. It's just like if you're listening to a linear song and you want to hear your favorite song,
Oh, I
you can
see.
you can just listen to it now. The problem with that is that the infrastructure used to allow that basically shifts the payments from the artist to the company that owns the infrastructure. And
I
that's kind
see.
of where the problem is. And I think part of that problem is the fact that these are just sound recordings that were already made in the past. And like, in the 1970s, we ran into a period of sound recordings where you needed to buy a physical object that was kind of expensive in order to consume a sound recording. And because of that, suddenly musicians were like at the pinnacle of like capitalism is cool. Like, oh my god, this rules. We like everyone wants this thing that we're making, and everyone wants to buy it. And that's like sort of the age of the rock star, where you associate like famous musicians with being ultra rich and flying in private jets, and um, things. You think of bands like Queen or Van Halen, and um, that's just they're doing the same stuff that we're doing now, but at the time, uh, like LPs were like as hot a commodity as like working in tech. It's like that was just
Right.
a thing that everyone like suddenly needed to spend money on. It was revolutionizing entertainment. And these days,
Yeah.
TikTok is doing that. Like everyone wants to download TikTok and look at TikTok for an hour. And TikTok is not selling you like entertainment. They're selling ad space to people that want to put their ads in front of people who like the same thing that they're selling. It's like convoluted. They're selling information. Um,
Right, right.
and yeah, and then those are the people now that can afford the private jets and the rock star lifestyle. And I think people are just
I
romanticizing
see.
um, like a specific iteration of capitalism when they want to make a bunch of money on music. It's like that's never going to happen again. Like you're not going to
Right.
see like your average Joe musician like hitting the big time and signing multi-million-dollar record contracts and actually making the money back, because record contracts are really nothing more than bank loans at this point, where it's like a multi-million dollar contract is, I hope your record sells that multi-million-dollar amount, otherwise you're not making a cent, um, because you have to pay back the label
Right.
first.
So maybe maybe at this point, you would say the landscape has changed so much about the whole process that we can't get hung up. Even
Yeah,
as
and we
listeners,
can't go
we
back,
can't get hung up
and
on what worked in the past.
yeah,
Right.
it's never going to be that way again. And if it is, people will be disappointed and go consume things like streaming shows and video games instead, because it'll be whatever is
Right.
accessible entertainment. Like the reason music sold so well and musicians became so famous and so successful in the past is because that's just what regular people wanted to buy, and now regular people want to buy a Netflix subscription instead.
For sure. Yeah, that totally adds up. I almost feel bad. So the general way that I interview people, we start with the specifics and then get into the big picture stuff. And I feel like we've just been off the
Having a
leash here. I
conversation.
feel like a dork. Like, well, I feel like to say now, like, and what's your favorite VST? That just seems nuts after such a,
Well, I mean,
you know what I'm saying?
that's an important question too.
But I do want to wrangle a little bit and get into making music as it is without, or well, with computers, but without nuts algorithms helping us out like they may soon. And I kind of just I still want to stay with you because you make all of these music tutorial videos, like a ton of them, and they're very well received. People seem to love them. You seem to really enjoy making them. You you're somewhat of a character on them. You have these goofy backdrops. Sometimes you're in a dungeon or a prison or something. It's all very fun. Can you, and maybe this is some of the interaction between listener and the musician that you're talking about. Can you kind of talk about maybe your original reasons for starting making these kind of tutorials, and like what prompted that, what keeps you going with them, maybe how your mindset's changed through that? I don't know.
Sure.
What are your
Yeah.
just general thoughts
Um,
there?
are you familiar with Somber Arcane?
No,
Dungeons.
not whatsoever.
Okay, Dungeon Synth act out of Massachusetts, I think. Sorry if you if I got that
Okay.
wrong.
Sorry, do you mind saying it
But
again?
Somber Arcane.
Oh, Somber Arcane. I thought that you said
Yeah.
like totally something different that was one
Oh,
word. No,
okay.
my album was on a meme with their album cover.
Oh, cool. Okay.
Yeah, I am familiar with them.
Okay. So the members of that project were doing that, putting together the like the Twitch channel for Northeast Dungeon Siege, and doing like all
Okay.
kinds of stuff like the like analog dungeon and what were some of the other ones? Guild and Craft, and just some of the live stream
Okay.
concerts and stuff like that. And they asked me to do some tutorials for like as like kind of commercial breaks for the channel, where it would be like the
Okay.
music production show, and then there would be like a break where it would be me teaching you something about synthesis. And so I made some videos for them for that channel, and I had a ton of fun doing it. So I started making more of them, and I tried doing some of it on live stream, and kind of had fun with that too. And huge learning curve to doing that, but I've gotten to a point where I'm relatively comfortable doing that. And
Okay.
that was basically what got me
Learning
started with
curve with sorry to interrupt, but with making the tutorials or with doing the streaming? When you
both.
say
Really,
huge
I'm
learning curve there.
more with the streaming of
Okay.
getting it to sound and look decent without having the
I can
opportunity to
imagine
edit.
that. Yeah.
Yeah, I still haven't gotten one of those Stream Deck things, but I've been wanting to get either that or a touch screen to change scenes without having to look to my other monitor and click around. Um,
Oh, I can
uh,
see. Yeah.
yeah, but it's that was the thing that got me started with those, and then I had another friend that was starting a YouTube channel around the same time, so we both just started getting in the habit of trying to release content regularly, and sort of to encourage each other to do it. And having like 2-hour phone conversations trying to figure out like what we should do to make our stuff better. And that's really what got me started. It was just encouragement from other people. And
Right, right.
then like the thing that kept me going was encouragement from other people also, just different kind of people, just from people I didn't know, and comments and questions, and hopping into the chat on live streams and stuff like that. Just seeing people actually consuming the videos that I was making was like, oh, okay, I'll keep doing this.
Yeah, because it's very well received, I think. I'm going to imagine that's how a lot of the listeners have become familiar with your name, and a lot of listeners to my podcast, that is, have
Uh-huh.
heard about you, and where they'll recognize you, and be excited to see that you're honest from that.
Yeah, I didn't realize
I,
until I was doing that that I like if you search on YouTube like how to make dungeon synth, there's not really a lot of stuff, and I didn't catch that before I started making the channel, and now it's like people
oh
show up to
yeah,
my videos and they're like, I couldn't find anything else about making dungeon synth. Can you make
it's
recommendations? And it's like,
legitimately the only
not really.
thing.
I mean, Orang has a couple of videos on his channel, and then there's
Right,
one or
they're
two other
pretty
ones,
old.
but there's not a ton, and I didn't realize that when I started making
Yeah.
that. So I had to kind of step
So
into the position once people started asking.
because there's kind of a lot of stuff that could be seen as how to make dungeon synth could apply to plenty of other things, and I feel
Yeah.
like uh, you make this intentional choice to be very devoted to this genre as opposed to how to make music with computers. I'm going to make it sound like this. You're very much, how do you make Dungeon Synth? How do you do a Dungeon Synth project? All of that flow. Even I think even like your synthesizer videos are in the title within the context of Dungeon Synth, not just how does this synthesizer work. Uh, is that
Yeah,
just a,
a
a
lot of them
passion
are.
for the genre, or
It,
yeah, I don't know what.
that's
Yeah,
mostly.
go on.
I think that's actually mostly the result of the genre being the thing that started the channel and started me making the
I
videos.
see. Yeah,
And I've made videos about other topics too, but
for sure.
like something about Dungeon Synth is um it's more accessible uh to, I think, someone that's trying to learn how to make music on the internet, because
Absolutely.
there's
Yeah.
like one of my pet peeves um is, well, with music production tutorials on the internet, is that like the format, like the favored format seems like it's kind of become like, we're going to make a funk song in 60 seconds. And when I see that, it's like,
Oh
wait,
yeah.
wait, 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 back up. We're not going to do that. Like you cut the video to like a jump cut every second
Yeah.
with a new piece of it, and no one's going to actually learn anything unless they already possessed all the skills. And one of my big inspirations in my YouTube channel is Tom Hulkenborg, who has a YouTube channel. Junkie XL is his channel and his pseudonym that he releases music under. And
Ooh, I'm not
that was the first
familiar.
time I'd seen like YouTube videos that were like, free tutorial how to make, string arrangement or something like that, where the video was like an hour and a
Oh
half
wow.
long and covered maybe a 10-second piece of music, where it's like, here's actually
Yeah.
how much work it takes to do this. And people watch his content not because it's like engaging and like entertaining and all over the place and, oh my god, you're going to get so good, but because more because of his credentials. I mean, he's scored like Mad Max
Yeah.
Fury Road, for example, and the Avengers movies and stuff like that. So like people, respect him
Wow.
and recognize that, like, oh, he's doing it the right way. And um I don't have the power to make a video like that because it would be boring, I think, if I didn't have like an example of something to show for it, where it's like, and here's like this thing that you've consumed or seen, like a game or a movie, that makes it worth watching this long tutorial because this is what it actually looks like. So a genre like Dungeon Synth, where making one song um, is something that's possible in half hour, 45 minutes, or an hour. Like
Yeah.
you can sort of make a song. Usually I spend a little bit longer than that. And a lot of the stuff that I release, I'll come back to it. And one of the problems with working on stream is that I'm in headphones. So I come back to it after stream, listening on speakers and tuning the mix and
For
maybe
sure.
adding or subtracting a few things that I don't like. So I end up on a 1.5 hour stream. If I release the track, probably spending 2 to 3 hours total on the song. But like if you're making
Still
a film
quick
score,
turnaround, all things considered.
yeah, absolutely. And that's the thing, is that it's I don't feel like I'm being terribly dishonest, showing like, here's how to make a song, and the video is an hour and a half or an hour or even half an hour, because that's how long it takes to make a song like that. So
Yeah.
I can make a video that's like of a consumable length, that's actually showing you how to make this type of music, instead of just
I
being like,
see.
oh yeah, just like use your ears and like get the feel right. And then what does that tell you if you've never done it before? Nothing, right? It's like, it's a
Yeah.
worthless piece of advice unless you've got a degree in the subject.
Right. Yeah, the
Yeah,
longer
that's
form, I think it works with your teaching style really well.
thank you,
I
I
know.
appreciate that.
Yeah, you're very good about actually explaining your decisions from what I've watched. Like you gave the example, let's make a funk song in 60 seconds. A lot of times 5 seconds of that is, and then I added drums and now there's just a full drum part being played. Whereas
Uh-huh.
if you're a newer musician, you don't know where the snare goes, you don't know where the hi-hat's going. I feel like you take the time to explain that, and
Yeah, and I try
within
to
the
do that
longer
because
form, it works well.
Yeah, I had to figure out so much of that stuff on my own by I mean
Right.
one of the big things, like the big ultimate trick that didn't exist when I was learning music that um everyone needs to know about is going on YouTube, pulling up a song you like and setting the speed to 0.5 or 0.75.
Oh,
Um
yeah.
and you just figure it out. It's just such an incredible tool. And these days, most music production softwares have that option as well. But the fact that it's on YouTube
Right.
and it's free to access your favorite song at half speed, so you can really figure out what that hi hat's doing, it's an invaluable tool. Um, but
Yeah.
there's that definitely that element of like I want things structured and explained from like more of a logic perspective. I want to know what we're doing and why instead of like oh yeah, just set it to a sawtooth waveform and put the filter at 60%. And it's like, well, what's that doing to the sound? Like, show me what it does at 0%, 100%. Why a sawtooth waveform
Right.
instead of a square wave? And a lot of times people can't answer those questions. They're just regurgitating what they were taught. And a lot of times I can't answer those questions either. So you like to show it. Like, here's another way that some people do it. I've seen it like this before, but I don't like it. I've seen it like this before, but I do like it. And I think that I really appreciate long form content like that. So my rule is that like
Yeah.
I grew up like with adults would always tell me and other kids like, oh, you're one in a million, and it's like, cool. So there's like how many people on the
I
planet, and
see.
so how many
Yeah.
people are just like you, like.
Right. Far more
uh,
than a million. That's funny.
yeah, so it's like one in a million isn't unique, and I figure if this is how I would want it presented, this is how I'm going to present it, because some people on the internet are going to find it and they're going to be glad that someone did it that way too.
Yeah, that's wonderful. And I think if you're making the content that you want, then you're going to do a better job with it than
Absolutely.
if you're trying to squeeze things into something that's, I don't know, more energetic but less informative. If that's not your thing, seems like
I've
the right path.
I've tried and it just crashes and burns before I even put it up. It's just
Oh,
it's
really?
so hard for me I'm not much of an actor, and a lot of the especially like I see it especially on apps like YouTube and TikTok where creators will just, hey, what's up everyone? Here's my new energetic persona, and
Yeah.
it's like if you're actually like that in real life, I would never want to hang out with you. I don't think you are, and I'm very envious of your acting skills and your ability to like put out that much energy.
I was. It's funny that you mentioned that because the in the videos I've seen of yours, like I mentioned, putting yourself in a little green screen dungeon, things like that. You do have like just a weird, distinct sense of humor, but it
Uh-huh.
seems like you're going for it, and it adds flavor to it. I was curious if that's you, or if that's a bit of a character that you do for the videos.
That's more
If I
me.
had to guess
I
after that
love
comment, that's
yeah,
you. That's fun.
I love camp. That's like I think one of the things that I like
Yeah.
about Dungeon Synth is that like it's this style of music where like some of the stuff that happens in it is to me like I mean maybe people are gonna hate me for saying this, explicitly funny. And in the
Yeah.
same way that
Yeah.
like for example, one of my favorite movies is Bram Stoker's Dracula, the 90s movie with Anthony Hopkins and Keanu Reeves and Winona
Okay.
Ryder, and Gary Oldman, of course, as Dracula. And in that film, it's a completely serious film. Like I would like never in a million years would I describe it as a comedy, but it's one of the funniest movies I've ever seen. Like there's places where like the camera cuts from one scene to another and like an object is the same shape and it's very clearly like a cinematography decision, but like in the context that things like that happen in the movie, it's almost always something that I'm sure the editor and the camera crew like had a laugh about. And it's stuff like when you've worked
Oh,
in
yeah.
entertainment and you've worked behind the scenes, like so many of these things are like intentionally funny, but in a way where they're making sure that their audience sees it as serious the first time, and you come back and you find the Easter eggs and you have a laugh. Like,
Oh.
and I love that kind of stuff so much. It's my favorite type of media. So Dungeon
I
Synth is
can
a
see that.
great
That's a good
playground for
type
that.
of humor.
Yeah, I mean, like,
So
uh, I think of bands that use things like corpse paint for, like, I think Immortal is a great example of camp. I don't know if you're familiar with that band, but
no, I'm not.
they're just like, they are completely serious, like ultra heavy black metal, and oh my god, they're hilarious. It's just like so funny, and they're so aware that they're funny, and um
Right, just
I mean,
so
I
over the top into the bit.
yeah, and when people don't recognize that they're funny, like, I mean, you they it's almost clear to me that they haven't met people that are in that band, or that are interacting with people in bands similar to that, or like
I
shows or
see.
games. It's always like so much of that's intentional, and it's okay to be funny and also like really cool and like dark and ominous. There's like you can be both, and
Right,
you
it
can do
doesn't
it in
always
a
have
way
to
that's not,
detract.
yeah, it doesn't have to be like insulting. Like, I'm
Right.
avoiding parody. I don't want to be a parody of what I'm doing. I want to do, like, I don't want
Yeah.
to do it seriously, but I want that element of camp where, like, I'll put something that's
Right. I
like,
think that with naming songs a lot.
yeah,
Like
that's a
trying to
great
get it the
example.
right amount of dark and edgy that it's clearly intentionally over the top, but you're not also like you said, it's not a parody. It really is it. That's just the feel that you're going for.
Uh-huh. And if you can't do that, if you haven't gotten to the point where you're able to make those jokes and stuff like that while you're working, um, I think I almost want to go so far as to say that you might not be able to make creative work, because from what I've
Ooh.
seen, that type of like
Yeah,
not
interesting.
taking yourself completely seriously all the time is the stuff that leads to creative decisions, where it's like, oh, let's see if this funny thing would work, and you're like, oh, that's actually kind of cool, and you take the joke and you
I
change it so that
see.
it's not a
Yeah.
joke anymore, but it's good, a good melodic choice or something like that.
Yeah.
And I see
And I think a
humor
lot
be
of
like a
times
huge
that
ingredient.
yeah, that humor will come from being in a place of comfort, and if you're comfortable working, you're okay with making like stylistic choices like that. And I don't know if you have a chip on your
Yeah,
shoulder,
it comes
might
from
be other
working
issues
behind
with
the
the music.
it comes from working behind the scenes in theater, of any kind, whether it's,
I see.
um, like
Yeah.
video, or I think of making a game as theatrical, where you're hiding stuff behind the set pieces, and in music, like, there's this thing where, like, usually you're the character, and because you're the character, it becomes harder to, you know, decide where to draw those lines. And it's easier to do it when you rename the character and give the character makeup and
Right.
a cloak and stuff like that. But it's been a challenge for me to make that character me instead of whatever it's been in the past with pseudonyms and releasing music anonymously, whatever else. And I've done all that stuff and
I can
had
see
fun with
that.
it. But I like I kind of like just being, hey, hi, it's me, and welcome, and we're gonna we're gonna do this without
So that comes
um
into the videos, yeah.
yeah, it's and that's I think it comes from for me at least. I think a lot of that initially came from a place of insecurity, and as I get older and become more comfortable with the stuff I'm doing, I can confidently make a musical decision and say, like, this is supposed to be kind of silly, and it's okay to
Hmm.
make something kind of silly, because you know what that does is it makes the really dark and ominous thing that comes after it sound so much more dark and ominous, because of the dynamic between
Oh
those
yeah,
two
that's
moods.
nice. Right. So, thinking about other resources, something that you mentioned earlier that how invaluable slowing down YouTube tracks are. Uh, do you have anything else like that? Like maybe some really helpful but less known resources that are out there for like training or improving as a musician? I guess I'm thinking less like really cool VST no one's heard of, and more like uh, yeah, like scrubbing for audio, like you were saying, things like that, or ear training. If you think that that's important, what you prioritize, any tools like that that you would recommend to newer artists?
Yeah, I think ear training is really important, um, and everyone has their own musical background, so I might be speaking too autobiographically here, but I cannot
Hmm.
understate the value of rhythmic ear training. Like,
Oh,
if you hear like, you should be able to recreate that. Like, that's so much more
I
important than
see.
picking the right notes. Um,
I've never heard anyone say that like that, but yeah, that's pretty invaluable.
mhm. And finding part of that is feeling a pulse. So if you have like ba da 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 da, just finding different places where a simple pulse can fit into the same concept, because that can become bum 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 bum, like any
Yeah.
melody. And knowing where that pulse can go shows you where you can, like you mentioned, where you can place the hi-hats or the snare or whatever it is.
Right,
um,
right.
and if you're not using drums, it shows you where you can place other instruments to create either rhythmic movement or rhythmic ambiguity, which is, I think, very important in ambient music,
Yeah,
which I think dungeon synth is in a lot of ways related to ambient music more than it
I
is to rhythmic
agree
music.
completely. Do you is training like that, did that just kind of come along the way as you're getting through music, or
No,
did you have
I have a degree.
exercises that you would grind? Oh,
I
go
actually
ahead.
I have a degree in a formal, like, background.
Okay.
Yeah, I have a
Okay,
degree in
maybe I should have asked
composition
about
and
that
stuff like that.
earlier.
Yeah.
So this rhythmic ear training, do you have like particular exercises that someone could do for that, or is it just critical listening that comes from?
um, I um I think there's a lot of value to just getting like a beginner book on drumming.
Sure, yeah.
Like, just
Even just knowing where things tend to go.
there's a really classic one called Syncopation,
Okay.
and it's like an entire book of mostly very simple rhythms, um, with instructions to count out loud while you perform them.
I
And the
see.
rhythms for essentially two, for like, there's three rhythms. There's the count, the 1, 2, 3, 4, and then there's the right hand and left hand. So it's like, the idea is that you'd play them on two drums or between a foot and a hand on a drum kit, but you can apply
Yeah.
them to anything. And they
A lot of
are
people use their lap.
what was
If you
that?
don't have anything else, you can just use like your left thigh, right thigh to
Exactly, yeah.
practice things like that.
And just going through like the first 20 pages of a book like that is going to, if you've never done anything like that or never focused on rhythm or taken a music lesson, um it's going to take you from um having no idea what you're doing to being able to sit in with pro musicians and sound like you know what you're doing because they sound better than you and you're not messing up. And
That's
like,
spectacular advice.
yeah, it's like, if you watch like a pro band playing, you only know if they make mistakes because they make a face. And that's because they're never making rhythmic errors. It's only like note errors.
Right. Yeah, I completely agree, and I've noticed with that, as long as the musicians are locked in, uh, things typically sound, they sound just fine.
Yeah, absolutely.
That anything else like that you can think of if you're thinking of maybe like a training regime for
Yeah.
beginners musicians?
Um Everyone wants to learn, they call it music theory.
Right.
And 99% of the people that say that out loud are talking about like Western European music theory, and common practice of the common practice period, like in like the classical period, like Germany,
Interesting.
Mozart. And music theory is just like the act of like having an ongoing discussion about music and naming things that haven't been named yet so we can talk about them. And
Wow.
like, people conflate that with tonal harmony, which is
Right.
the style that's like, major and minor scales, triad chords, things like that. And neither of those things is super useful to a beginner songwriter. They're both great to know. Um, and they're things that you learn over time. They're not things that you learn
Interesting.
first. It's not like a foundation that you have to have before you start. But you just keep learning it as you go, basically. But something
Okay.
that is great to learn first, and something that's generally taught first, before you get into the nuts and bolts of tonal harmony and common practice era music theory, is intervals. Like,
Oh, that's great.
you've got,
Yeah.
if you're working with like, assume making the assumption that you're working within the confines of Western music, so you've got 12 notes to an octave, because that's
Right.
also like a construct. That's just a tuning system that we've got
For
called equal
sure.
temperament,
Yeah.
right? And I assume that anyone that's most of the people that are making dungeon synth, as far as I can tell, are working with keyboards.
Yeah. That's a
And
pretty safe
keyboards are,
assumption, I think.
yeah, keyboards are sort of designed to have that. They have 12 notes for an
Right.
octave, and digital keyboards can often, and analog keyboards actually, like electronic keyboards, can be retuned so you don't have exactly that ratio. But usually you leave it there, and if you're going to leave it
Yeah.
there, know what what each note sounds like compared to a control note. So like play a C, and then listen to a C sharp at the same time. Play a C and listen to a D at the same time. Play a C and listen to a D sharp at the same time, then an E, and go through the whole octave until you get to the octave, and get to know what those things sound like. And it's helpful to know what they're called, but just knowing what they sound like is a great start, because that's your like, if your scale is your palette, your intervals are the first like step in blending those colors.
Yeah.
um, and chords are just collections of intervals. They're stacks of intervals. And
Yeah. Yeah. Literally stacks.
people like want to learn their major and minor chords, or like their like even more complicated chords, things like minor seventh chords, like jazzy sounding chords,
Yeah.
before they know how to tell what their intervals are. And a minor seventh chord is really easy to identify if you know what major thirds and minor thirds sound like stacked. And figuring that out first, just by playing that C and then listening to what it sounds like along with every other note in the octave, is so helpful. And that's a foundation that's actually useful.
Yeah. That's big. That's really good advice, I think.
One other thing that goes with that too, especially in dungeon synth, is that a lot of artists aren't even using full chords. They're using
Right.
like a power chord, which is just a perfect fit. That's one of those intervals, and identifying that one as one of the ones that sounds cool, is like, there's
Yeah.
a great starting point. And you're not going to end up muddying up your power chord with that E or the E flat if you're playing a C power chord,
Sure.
because like that's not going to sound great in the low register you're playing in most of the time. It does sometimes, but you'll know when it does and when it doesn't, to your personal taste, by practicing listening to it.
Wow, that's really good advice as well. It makes me kind of reconsider how I answer that question for people. I
What's your
usually
answer?
say, well, now I don't want to say it because it sucks. I usually, I'll say to start with the Nashville number system. I think that's a very practical one, but I think that there's too many assumptions there. I think it's, you
That's
need more of a groundwork to use that.
the Nashville chord charts, right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
just
yeah.
like the
That's
Roman numerals, but you
yeah,
assume it's major key and don't
that's a great
complicate it.
system once you go a few steps beyond what I was talking about. What I'm talking
Right?
about is like, is sort of a beginner step, but
Yeah. I think to ask someone, because then you'll end up at best saying you have major minor chords, but you don't know why they're major and minor. You don't know about stacking thirds or how you make them, and I think that sticking with intervals as a first step is the right level of learning it.
well, I mean, that's more of a second step. The first step is like touching the keyboard and seeing what it sounds like and playing one note at a time.
I see.
uh,
Yeah, yeah, that
and
adds up as
the
well.
yeah, intervals are a good place to start for like, I want to play more than one note together, a bass
Right,
note and a
right.
melody note, for example. But yeah, I think that usually people that get to the point where they're trying to write music have gotten past that first step of just trying the instrument out and
Sure.
seeing if they like it. Because occasionally I'll get people that you know want to learn how to make music but don't like instruments, and
Ooh.
I understand not liking instruments, but like if you don't have fun like sitting down and just making sounds on the instrument, your first step is finding an instrument that you do like doing that with, because you're not going to get very
Yeah.
far if you don't enjoy the tool.
Yeah. All right, I have one more thing that I want to creep in. I see we're already at an hour. But something that I'm really curious about listening to your dungeon synth music. A bit of a setup, but I feel like you do a very good job of staying true to the dungeon synth sound, but you still have very like detailed, nuanced production, and I found that that's really difficult to do. A lot of the roots in the genre lie in like less produced, more raw sounds, uh, and I'm excited about maybe producing things a little bit more. But sometimes I feel like I stray from the genre when I do that. Whereas your stuff is very carefully produced, very lush and interesting and nuanced, but it's also true to the genre. Could you talk a little bit about maybe how you make that work, how you make that happen?
By accident, I think. I wish I had
Okay.
I wish I had a better answer for that, but
Yeah.
I do feel like what I do is, I mean, if you you know, if you just throw away like 20 hours of your life and go watch a bunch of the video on demand of my old live streams of like let's
Okay.
make dungeon synth,
Yeah.
you'll see that like more than half of them I end up at the end of it being like, well, that doesn't really sound like dungeon synth, so we'll use it for something else. and and I think the answer is that like a lot of the time it just doesn't really turn out sounding like dungeon synth. And
So
I
your
haven't.
answer is more that they're carefully curated for the releases,
Exactly.
maybe.
Yeah.
I see.
And I think that that's a big piece of a style like dungeon synth is just curating it, or any style really. And my advice to people that have a little bit more experience writing music, um, if they're trying to do that, is just have more release outlets. Like I'm able to do that because I release stuff with under like one, two, three, four, five, six or more names, like project names. And it's like, um, come up with a project name for, your outtakes, come up with
Hmm.
put a band together to play the stuff that sounds more like rock and roll or funk music or whatever. Um, have like a hip hop project for the stuff that has kind of like a boom bap type of a beat to it.
Yeah.
And then by doing that, you don't have to feel guilty about throwing away like the 95% of your songs that don't sound like the genre you want to make. Because
Ah.
like, I mean, the thing that I tell, I teach a couple of classes, like more formal music production classes, outside of the internet, like as like a job in
Right.
person type of
Right.
thing, like at a real school and stuff like that. But one of the things that I'll tell students is, like, have you heard of Pablo Picasso? This question one. The answer is
All
always
right.
yes. So far, everyone's heard of Pablo
So
Picasso so
far.
far. Um, and then picture three of his paintings, because he's a famous painter. Can you do that?
I see where you're heading. I don't think that I can. No.
Yeah, I think I can picture the one that's like the big chaotic like battle scene. There's like one that's like a portrait of a woman, and there's like a self portrait, and that's like about it. And I've
Yeah.
like looked at a ton of his stuff. Those are the three that come to mind. They're like three really famous ones. And then the third question is, have you ever Google searched how many paintings did Pablo Picasso create?
I see.
I'm doing it right now.
What are we at?
Um, the answer there is, um, he is estimated to have completed 13,500 paintings and around 100,000 prints and engravings.
Oh my god. Yeah, I see the dude with the guitar.
The guitar, yeah, that's a really
That's the one.
famous
Oh
one.
yeah, I
Yeah,
guess that is him.
yeah.
But yeah.
So okay, and the takeaway there is that it's a numbers game. Like you're not gonna
Yeah.
like everything you make. Other people aren't gonna like everything you make. Um, you're not gonna make it unless you make the ones that you don't like, also, or the ones that don't fit in. So my outlook is just, it's all about curation.
Yeah.
Anything that
That
I
is
put
so
out that's got like
insightful.
4 songs, I probably made 10 songs. If it's got 10
Yeah.
songs, I probably made 20 songs. And of the 10 songs, I mean, another big piece is positivity. present it like you mean it. Other people are probably going to like the ones you don't like. Um, of my albums, I usually like 3 to 5 songs out of 10. And I try to do things with the production or the performance to make the other ones fun enough to keep.
I
Um,
see.
and I liked all 10 when I made the album. It's just by the time I'm done with it, I'm sick of them.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's how I do it. It's just I get lucky with 1 to 5% of the stuff that I make, and I curate that stuff as best as I can.
Wow. Wow. Well, that ended up being a really satisfying answer, although kind of splash of cold water. I don't know. I feel like I
Yeah.
I learned a little bit about my own music that I don't want to hear. I
Yeah.
got to start
And
curating a
actually,
little. I'm bad. I can hoard songs. It's not good.
the album that my band Old Man Wizard is putting out this week,
Hmm.
the I like searched. I was searching for the demo of one of the songs in my email because I read all the music and sent it to my bandmates, and we learned the songs, put them together as best as we can, and then record them. And in this case, we
Yeah.
recorded them live, and I think they sound great. But it took rehearsing them for a while. It took remaking them, learning them, changing them,
Yeah.
learning them again, changing them again. And the oldest email I can find with a demo of one of the songs, the one that we actually put out a music video for, it's called "Kill Your Servants." And I
Right.
have
That's the album title as well, is it?
yeah, the album is "Kill Your Servants Quietly," and
I
I have
see.
a
Yeah.
demo of that song from more than 5 years ago in my email.
Oh my
And
gosh.
it's like, the album comes out this week. Here we go. So I hoard songs too. And that's the result of
Okay.
the more carefully I curate them, the more likely they are
Yeah.
to die on an old hard drive that lasted
Yeah.
less time than the amount of time it took to make the songs.
I guess on that note, we touched on the new album, but then kind of got distracted on who knows what we were talking about for 20 minutes. I know it's available in pretty much every format, it seems like, and I think you said it's was it the end of this week, maybe Friday is the
Yeah,
release
it comes
date?
out Friday of this week, and it should be available on pretty much every format. It'll be on um, Spotify, Apple Music, YouTube, iTunes, all that stuff. It'll be on Bandcamp if you want to like buy a digital copy, like a high res digital copy.
Cool.
It's on. We aren't working with a label for it, and so the
Oh man.
physicals are on Bandcamp too. But we are self-releasing a CD, a tape, and an LP of it. And the tape comes in 2
Cool.
different colors. So
T-shirts too, right?
there's some T-shirts.
Nice.
That's what I'm doing after this is putting out a fire relating to those. The
Oh
designs
no.
weren't put together correctly, so I have to figure out what was
Oh
wrong with them and
no. With the
resend them.
printing?
I don't really know
Oh
what
my
happened, but
gosh.
that was in my email when I opened up my email to get
Oh no.
the link for this. I was like, oh shit.
Uh-oh.
So I'll make sure those are out as soon as they can. But the t-shirts,
Right.
because of that, it sounds like they might be late shipping them. And the LPs,
Understandable.
I already listed as not coming out at the same time.
I
The
see. Yeah.
distribution said that they're probably going to be shipping in January, beginning of January. So
Okay.
not too long, but you have to wait
Yeah.
a little bit longer if you want the record.
Is there anything you want to say about the album to sell people on it, or just go hog wild, go check it out?
It's my favorite album that I've made, and
Well, that's big.
I've been seeing a lot of the early reviews. We sent it to a bunch of reviewers, and I've been seeing a lot of 9 out of 10s and and I just saw a 10 out of 10 for the first time.
Yeah,
So
yeah, you mentioned the 10 out of
yeah,
10. That's big.
so it's my favorite album I've done, and it seems like everyone else's favorite album that I've done too so far that's heard it. So um,
Nice.
I like, I don't know. If you don't like the song that plays, skip it and try the next one. They all sound different.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Give it a try. I like
Cool.
it.
Well, I guess we can wrap there. Do you want to go ahead and just plug anything else, whatever you have? I think your
um
Bandcamp's your name, right?
yeah.
francisroberts.bandcamp.com.
Yep.
What else do we have? You're kind of all over the place. Are
Yeah.
you Francis Roberts on YouTube?
Yeah. Um, that's just youtube.com/Francis Roberts is the YouTube. Um,
Gotcha.
I guess I'll say that like I have if you watch my YouTubes and you're listening to this and you've been wondering where I am, I am pretty much done setting up my new home studio, so I'll probably start streaming again like next week, I think, hopefully.
Nice.
I haven't been getting on very much, and um, everything's in a different place than it was, and it's all much better for me. So hopefully that comes back to business as usual. But I've been missing it, and broke a few things when I was moving stuff. So I'm almost done fixing all
You
of it.
mentioned some broken audio equipment when we were setting this up, so it all checks out.
Never ending.
Yup. Cool. Anything else you want to plug before we get out of here?
I don't think so. I think I've probably said enough.
I think Old Man Wizard. I think all your projects, like Old Man Wizard, is oldmanwizard.bandcamp.com, right?
Yeah, or even that one, I've actually got the URL. You can just do
oldmanwizard.com.
Nice. Also, and I actually have that one.
Okay. Wow. Yeah. Wow. Very big.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thanks again so much for coming on. Then it was a very fun, very wild chat. I think the folks are gonna like it.
Thanks for having me.
All right. Catch you later.
All right. See ya.
Hello, friends. It's been a little while. I've been out. Trev's been off in the world doing his own thing. But I'm back. I'm happy to be back. I'm happy to be sharing such a wild interview here with Francis Roberts. We just had a time and a half there. It was tough to keep things on track with all the big, crazy ideas flowing, everything we're diving into, but that's where the juice lies. That's the gold. That's what we want. So glad we got to hear it. If you're listening to this, odds are you're likely already familiar with Francis, at least a little bit, but be sure to check out all their stuff. This episode's out a little later than when we recorded, maybe 2 weeks or so. So that means that album they were mentioning is out. So be sure to check out that new Old Man Wizard album. It's very good. Would totally recommend. Check them out all over the place. I know they've got oldmanwizard.com, francisroberts.bandcamp.com, just youtube.com/Francis Roberts. I think they're just Francis Roberts on Instagram even. Pretty consistent branding, so just check them out. If there's something I'm missing, I'm sure one of those things I said will link you to it. Ton of cool stuff out there, ton of cool resources, as well as just good music and entertainment. And I'll give you some quick Trev news before we wrap up. First and foremost, I'd like to announce that the tapes for my first full-length album, Seize It With Thine Own Hands, are now in production. Those dudes are going to be up for sale any day now. They might even be up right now if you aren't checking this episode out on release. These tapes are through the spectacular Uncomfy Records. Uncomfy's actually contributed a good bit of original artwork for the release. There's so many extra bits that come with the tape release other than just the image on the front of the J card. So there's a ton of unique things that are just with this release that really, they make it special. I actually just got the images of the cassettes themselves of what the tapes are going to look like, and they look so cool. They've got a skull with a crown. They got some castles. It's so nice. And then the J card looks wonderful. The layout's nice. The original art looks great on it. Everything's good on them. I'm very excited. So just keep an eye out for them. uncomfyrecords.bandcamp.com. Uncomfy Records on Instagram. Their other releases are great too. A ton of my favorites are from their label. I've also still got shirts on castbitten.bandcamp.com/merch. Cool Castbitten bird shirts. They're nice. They're good quality. They fit well. Check those dudes out. And yeah, as always, I've got my Castbitten music, my Castbitten podcasts. Those are just hanging out in the world wherever you'd normally be listening to those. Yeah, I'm going to get out of here. I've got some nice interviews lined up. Like I said, I've kind of been off, but we're back in the swing of things. I've got, like, I don't know, 3 or 4 people that I'm just so psyched to have on, and I'm going to try to, I don't know, not keep you folks waiting so long if I can. So, thanks so much for sticking around. Thanks for listening. Thanks to old Francis for coming on and chatting. Take care, everyone. Get out of here.